Sarah drove into Oaxaca to the accompaniment of thunder. The bus, rusted to the state of an archaeological find, dropped her off at a deserted stop 2 kilometers from the city. The driver, without looking at her, threw the suitcase into a puddle and drove away, leaving Sarah alone under an overhanging sky the color of wet asphalt. She adjusted her backpack, feeling the sweat trickle down her spine. Is this really an authentic experience? She thought, remembering the rave reviews on blogs about non-tourist Mexico. Carmen noticed her first. An elderly woman appeared from around the corner like a ghost silently, in a black dress that reached to her toes, with an umbrella cane in her hand. Sarah? Her English sounded like it was being pulled out with tongs. SS, the girl nodded, smiling with all her might. Hernandez stepped in front of Carmen like a shadow. A man in his 70s with a face resembling a dried pear. He didn't say hello, just picked up his suitcase and hobbled down the street paved with uneven stones. Sarah followed them, trying not to stumble, and caught glances from behind the shutters. A child's face flashed in one window, instantly disappearing when she turned her head. The house turned out to be an exact replica of her. Childhood nightmares 2 stories high, with peeling green shutters and a crack gaping across the entire wall like a scar. There was a cage on the porch with a parrot that flapped its wings as they approached. Kideido. Carmen abruptly grabbed Sarah's elbow when she reached out to pet the bird. It bites. The room on the second floor smelled of mold and incense. A narrow bed with springs ready to break through a thin mattress. A chest of drawers with a mirror where mercury has peeled off at the edges, distorting the reflection. A grated window, beyond which was a courtyard in abandoned garden with a dried-up fountain, where a rusty statue of an angel pierced itself with a sword. The bathroom is at the end of the hall. Carmen pointed to the door. The water is only cold. Sarah nodded, dropping her backpack on the bed. When she turned to ask about the keys, Carmen was gone. Instead, Hernandez stood in the doorway, holding a brick-sized lock in his hands. "Para seguridad," he muttered, fastening a massive iron bracket to the outside of the door. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The lock is outside, so they can lock me up here any time. "Thank you," she managed when the old man handed her the key. It was warm and moist, as if it had been held in a fist for a long time. In the evening, she was invited to dinner. The kitchen was lit by a single lamp with a green shade. On the table there are black beans, tortillas, and a jug of oregano. Carmen ate in silence, fingering her rosary beads under the table. Hernandez was slurping, staring at his plate. "Have you been renting a room for a long time?" Sarah asked, trying to break the silence. Carmen looked up in the lamplight. Her pupils seemed too black, without glare. "Tourists rarely come here. You are the first one in a year." Sarah's spoon clattered on her plate, and there were 6 rave reviews on the site. "And the parrot, what's his name?" "Diablo," Hernandez replied for the first time that evening. Sarah tossed and turned all night. The springs dug into the ribs, and someone was scratching behind the wall, either rats or old pipes. At 2:30, she was awakened by the sound of footsteps on the stairs, slow, with pauses, as if someone was climbing. Stopping at each step, she pressed herself against the wall. Grabbing the key from the table, the footsteps passed by the door, went downstairs, and died away. Old people, going to the bathroom at night, Sarah told herself until her heart calmed down. But at 4:17, it all started for real. At first, there was a feeling dense, physical, as if the air in the room had condensed into jelly. Then the smell, musty sweet, like rotting flowers. Sarah sat up, resting her palms on the mattress. Moonlight filtered through the cracks of the shutters, drawing stripes on the floor like prison bars. "Who's there?" Her voice cracked. The shadows did not respond, but when she reached for the light switch, she heard a whisper. Not outside the door, but inside the room. A soft murmur in Spanish, as if two people were talking behind her back. Sarah froze, feeling the hairs on the back of her neck rise. This is a dream. It's definitely a dream. She turned her head slowly. There was a key on the dresser, in a pool of moonlight, the one she put under her pillow. The whispers grew louder. Now there were hissing consonants in it, like a snake's rattle. Sarah jumped up. Grabbing the key, the metal was icy. "Quien está?" she shouted in Spanish. Silence, then the creaking of the stairs. Not down, but up. She rushed to the door, put her eye to the keyhole. A dim night light was on in the hallway, casting flickering shadows. A black figure crawled across the wall. Too tall for Carmen, too thin for Hernandez. "Who's there?" Sarah pulled the handle. The door swung open with an ease that a massive oak slab shouldn't have. There was no one in the hallway, only the stairs leading down into the black mouth of the first floor. And then she saw Carmen's black handkerchief lying on the floor in a pool of moonlight. Sarah went down 3 steps. The cold air burned my lungs. "The lady," her whisper faded into silence. A floorboard cracked somewhere below. She froze, feeling sweat trickle down her back. Even though it was cold in the house, a hand floated out of the darkness wrinkled, with blue veins, and grabbed a handkerchief. "Vete a dormir," Carmen's voice hissed, but it sounded different. Lower, hoarser, with growling notes. Sarah jumped back, hitting her heel on the step. When she went up to the room, the door slammed shut on its own. Almost pinching her fingers, the key in the lock turned with a click. "They're outside. They can enter whenever they want." She inserted the key again, turned it twice. Then she moved the chest of drawers to the door. Although she understood that the 2 old men could easily move it, I found a pocket knife in my backpack. Ridiculous protection, but at least something. Morning burst into the room through the cracks of the shutters with yellow streaks of light. Sarah opened her eyes. Still clutching the knife in her fist, her palm was numb from exertion, and there was a lump of clothes on her chest, which she mistook for a pillow in the dark. The key was in the lock, and the chest of drawers was by the door, just as she'd left it, so no one came in, she thought. But then she grinned at her naivety. If they wanted to enter, the castle wouldn't stop them. A bird cry from outside startled her. Diablo was screaming like a man possessed. "Muerta, abran los ojos." Sarah went to the window and opened the shutters. Carmen was sitting in the courtyard, under the porch. She fed the cats black, with ragged ears and bleary eyes. There were about 5 of them, rubbing against the hem of her dress. Purring like high-voltage wires, the old woman was humming the same tune that she had heard at night. "Buenos dias, Ciarita." Carmen turned her head at the creaking of the window. Her smile was too wide, as if her lips were stretching invisible threads. "Queer desayuner." "No, thanks." Sarah slammed the shutters shut, but before she could release the handle, Hernandez's voice came from below. "El bao est libre." He was standing right under her window, looking up. In the light of day, his face looked even more withered. His eyes sunk into his skull like a mummy's. In his hands he held an axe, the blade of which was covered with brown spots. I'll be down soon," Sarah muttered, pulling back. She quickly packed her things, stuffing them into her backpack with hysterical haste. There was that piece of paper under the bed. "Don't sleep when they sing. There is a rust like stain or blood on the back." Sarah slipped the note into her jeans pocket, realizing that she was checking the lock for the 5th time in a minute. As she went down the stairs, she heard barking, distant at first, then closer. 3 mongrel dogs with bristling fur ran up to the house. They rushed to the porch as if they sensed prey. "Silence!" Hernandez came out the door, the axe still in his hand. The dogs retreated, but did not stop talking. Their howls blended into a single jaw-chilling hum. The kitchen was empty. On the table there is a jug of water and 2 tortillas with traces of ice cream. Sarah poked one with her fork, and something white moved inside. She threw the plate away. Ciarita, Carmen was standing in the doorway, holding a bunch of keys in her hands. Necesita algo ms. No, I'm leaving today. The old woman's face twitched. For a moment, something wild flashed in her eyes, but it immediately dissolved into a sweet smile. Cuel stima, you paid for 3 nights. I changed my mind about the route. Carmen nodded, keys jingling. Entonces, le mostrar la salida. No, I'll do it myself. Sarah started for the door, but Hernandez blocked her way. He smelled of sweat and damp earth. Perm tame ayudar con su equipe. He reached for her backpack. No need. She jumped back, hitting the wall with her back. Silence hung like a heavy blanket. Hernandez slowly lowered his hand. Carmen froze, fingering her rosary. The dogs outside the window suddenly fell silent. Como quieras, the old man muttered and left, slamming the door. Sarah exhaled when she was alone. Her hands were shaking so much that she could barely put on her backpack. We need to check if there are any other keys. What if they come in when I leave? She crept into the Hernandez's bedroom, closing the door behind her. The room was in semi-darkness and smelled of camphor and urine. On the wall hung a crucifix with a decapitated Christ. Sarah opened the chest of drawers. The top drawer contains underwear soaked in mothballs. The second one contains vials of pills. Diazepam, morphine, something with unreadable labels. Third, she recoiled, crying out. There was a photograph at the bottom, a young Carmen in a wedding dress, next to a man whose face was cut out with a knife, not just crossed out, but torn out so that a hole the size of a coin remains. On the back is the inscription, "You chose her, now she sleeps in the garden." A floorboard cracked behind the door. Sarah frantically closed the chest of drawers, pressing her palm to her mouth to stifle her breathing. The footsteps passed by, went downstairs. She slipped out of the room, noticing that the bathroom door, which had been open yesterday, was now locked with a barn lock. There were keys in the kitchen, all 3 of them, just as she'd seen them before, but now they were wet, as if they had just been taken out of the water. Sarah touched one, a sticky, salty liquid, drool, or she wiped her fingers on her jeans. The barking resumed when she came out onto the porch. The dogs were breaking loose from their chains at the neighboring house, spluttering with saliva. One of them, a dog with a torn ear, broke loose and rushed to Sarah. She screamed, retreating to the gate. But the animal suddenly stopped a meter away from her, burying its nose in the ground. No crucis el circulo. A voice rang out from behind Sarah. She turned around. A 10-year-old girl stood on the threshold of a neighboring house, holding a doll without a head in her hands. "Who?" Sarah asked. The girl pointed to the ground. In front of the gate was a strip of white stones, almost worn out by time. "Elos ponen sal en el suelo. Para que los perros no pasen." The girl took a step back when the shadow of an adult woman flashed through the window. Vite, a horror. Sarah ran out the gate. The bus stop was 3 blocks away, but every step felt like a nightmare. The backpack pulled down. The sun beat down on the back of my head, and somewhere behind me a cart creaked. She didn't turn around until she heard Hernandez's voice, "Ciarita. Olvid algo." The old man was standing in the middle of the road, holding her forgotten water bottle. His figure seemed unnaturally tall, as if his shadow had stretched out at noon. "Leave it," Sarah shouted, speeding up her pace. "Es peligroso caminar, bajo el sol." He held out the bottle. "Tome, She ran. The trampling of dogs, Hernandez's screams. The rattle of the wagon, everything was mixed up in a deafening roar. It was only after falling into the bus seat that Sarah dared to look out the window. The old man was nowhere to be found. Only a dusty whirlwind circled the place where he stood. Evening. Mexico City. A room in a cheap hotel. Sarah took a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. Don't sleep when they sing. On the back under the stain, she saw the numbers. November 3rd, 2022, 2 days before her arrival. She Googled the address of the house. The first link is a forum for travelers. Missing in Oaxaca. Lisa's story. Canadian tourist Lisa Martins stayed at the home of an elderly couple on October 31st, 2022. On November 3rd, she stopped contacting. Locals claim that they saw her leave on a bus, but she is not in the surveillance cameras. Lisa's last message. They sing all the time. I can't sleep. Sarah refreshed the page. The post has been deleted. Thunder rumbled outside. A flash of lightning was reflected on the laptop screen, and for a moment it seemed to her that there was a silhouette in the dark window. She slammed the lid shut. The rain rattled on the windows, merging with Diablo's voice, which was obsessively spinning in his head. Muerta, muerta. Metal clicked loudly in his backpack pocket. Sarah slowly took out the key to the room in the Hernandez house. She was sure she'd left it on the dresser.